Hello and welcome to my May 2018 books read recap. That's a mouthful. I'm gonna jump right on in because I don't like long videos. The first book was When Never Comes by Barbara Davis, and I gave that 3.5 stars. This was another book that was a Kindle First book. It's about a lady whose husband is killed in a car accident, and he's found with a mysterious woman without a shirt on, who he's clearly having an affair with. Now the book, the Kindle First's like snippet that I read made it sound like the whole book was going to be about one thing, but that twist didn't turn up until halfway through the book, so I feel kind of weird about talking about it here, even though it's probably in the blurb on the thing. Heck, I'm just gonna talk about it. So basically, her husband's having an affair, and he has a secret child that she didn't know about, and so she kind of is wrestling with the idea of whether or not, like, how she can help this kid out, because the kid lives with, like, a really poor family, her grandmother is really sick, and blah blah blah, and so she's trying to help this kid out the best way she knows how, which is to give her some of her husband's writing money. I don't know. Regardless, it's a better book than I'm making it sound like. There's, of course, a forced love story in it. You can't get away from that. But love story aside, I enjoyed the story. It wasn't the best, but it was pretty good for a Kindle First. I've read some real doozies. So yeah, 3.5 stars seems pretty fair to me, I think. The second book I read in May was another Kindle First book. I might have had them sitting around in my Kindle for a while before I actually got around to reading them. I download them every month and then they just sit there sometimes. But anyway, was Hell's Princess by Harold Schechter. I'm probably butchering that. This is like a true crime story, I guess is what you call these. It's about a lady who was a murderer in the turn of the century. She was a serial killer. Lady serial killers are pretty rare. The fact that she got away with as much as she did is kind of staggering to me. Like, I was nearly laughing the whole time I was reading this book because it must have been so easy to be a criminal back then. Because she would just, like, invite dudes to her house. Like, she'd put out, like, you know, dating ads, basically, and then these guys would come and think that they were going to take her for all she was worth, but really she would just, like, let them stay there for a couple days and then kill them and bury them in the backyard, and then be like, oh, I don't know, they just skipped town, it's so weird, and they left all their stuff here, and nobody, like, questioned it? It's kind of super crazy to me, but she killed, like, a lot of dudes. So, like, that aspect of it was pretty entertaining. The end is that, like, you never really are quite sure if she was caught or if she got away, and that sort of, like, I kept waiting for an answer, but of course I went to Wikipedia and there is no answer. Like, nobody really knows, and she's probably long dead by now, so we'll probably never know, and that's a little bit frustrating. But the guy who wrote it kind of had, like, a little bit racist. I know some of it's not his fault because it was a different time when it happened, and some names, one name in particular, is kind of icky as far as racism is concerned. But I don't know. So there wasn't really much he could do about that. I understand that. But he kept, like, there's also some misogyny in there. Like, he keeps talking about how, like, ugly and fat the lady was, which doesn't really have anything to do with how good at murdering she was. So I just felt like that was a little unnecessary, but I, in general, enjoyed the book, and so I think that my 3-star rating is fair. The third book that I read in May was called Never Stop Walking by Christina Rickards, and I think this was also a Kindle First. I can't stop with those, I'm telling you. This one is a true story she wrote about her life. I guess when she was like 7 or 8, she got taken away from her mother and adopted by a family in Sweden, and she goes back looking to see if her mom is still alive and, you know, what her roots were and that sort of thing. And this book is so depressing. Like, the fact that this is real true stuff that happens to people, and like probably not just her, like probably a lot of people, is like so soul crushing. And so I gave it a 4.5 stars because even though I really enjoyed it and was very emotionally invested, and you know, I couldn't put it down, I still have a really hard time giving a 5-star rating to a book that made me really like so bummed out. Don't read this one if you are feeling depressed. That'd be my my suggestion to you. The fourth book that I read was Ferocity Summer by Alyssa Grosso. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I apologize again. This one was free. It was not a Kindle First, but I think she was doing like some sort of promotional thing where her books were free, and I downloaded it, and I gave that a 2-star review, which is really low for me. Let me tell you. Okay. So, the only reason it got 2-star review was because, like, some places in the book, I really felt like, I feel like the author has a lot more potential than she is writing, if that makes sense. Like, sometimes I would read an excerpt and I'd be like, oh, that's actually really good. But the rest of the book was not like that at all. First of all, it's about, like, teens and drinking and drugs and sex, and it just... that's not me, and that was never me, and so my interest is minimal, but I decided to read it anyway. But I feel like the author didn't really, like, I feel like she was just kind of writing what she thinks that teens who drink and use alcohol and drugs and stuff would be like and sleep around. Like, I really felt, I don't know, that maybe she was just kind of making things up. Two, like, some of the analogies in this book were, like, so insane. In fact, I'm gonna pick up my phone right now and I'm going to give you some direct quotes. Okay, so the main character is a teen girl, as I said. She says, "I wasn't really a lesbian, I just wished I was. Or maybe I was a lesbian stuck in a heterosexual girl's body." What? And so she's talking about this girl who she has a crush on. Then there was that way she walked, throwing her ass around like so many bags of unbleached flour. What? Here's another one I really liked. "Randy's name hung in the space between us like a piece of dirty toilet paper that had missed the pot. Neither of us wanted to claim responsibility for it. Neither one of us wanted to touch it. But at the same time, it was just a little too much to ignore." What? In fairness, I thought that I would read this excerpt that I screen capped because I really enjoyed it. "I stared past him at the windows of the convenience store, which were made almost completely impenetrable by the plethora of signs plastered to them. I thought about last summer, which seemed to be a blur of endless days spent behind the register inhaling the store's sour milk air. I, as a late teen, my friends worked at a convenience store, and I felt like this, like I could smell and feel the air in that convenience store when I read that excerpt. Here's another bit that I really actually did like. Just in fairness to my dislike of the rest of the story, I want to put these in. Obviously, I've liked other books and I'm not going to read aloud parts of them, but I really just disliked this book so much that I wanted to give at least a couple glimpses of good in it. "Dampness clung to everything and everyone, reminding all that the earth and our bodies are mostly water, and how could we have ever forgotten?" I really liked that too. It wasn't great. The writing, again, I feel like she could write goodly, but she's just not for some reason. Another complaint I have about the book is that there's a bunch of snippets of things that happen that you keep expecting to come together, but they don't really come together. And a lot of it's very predictable, a lot of it's very pointless, a lot of it was completely unnecessary to the story. It's just, I don't know, it's a weird book, and I didn't like it. The fifth book that I read in May was The Ocean at the End of the Lane, I believe, by Neil Gaiman, which I gave 5 stars. I love him and his writing, and this one was no exception. I know it's kind of got that same... He's got a type, I'll say, of book, but I love it, so I don't really mind it that much. If you don't like that kind of a book where it's like, you know, an adult looking back on his past as a child with like supernatural elements and, you know, kind of a sad family life, it's kind of that same thing again. But I can't fault it for being that again because I like the way he writes that particular thing. So I'm rambling. I liked this book. You might like it too. The 6th book and the last book that I read in May was St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves, or something similar to that, by Karen Russell. I didn't write the full novel name out because it was very long. This is a collection of short stories. I read a collection of her short stories last year. I can't remember if it was in a video or not, which was the Vampire Lemon Grove book. The internet exists. You can use those keywords and look up the rest of the title. I enjoyed that book. This one I gave a 3 stars. One of the things about her writing is that it's short stories, which I like, but then like it feels like it's building, like it gives you a cool like world building start, and then the story just ends like right before you get to the conclusion, which sometimes is cool, sometimes is not cool. I think in this book it's more stories where you, like, I get you're supposed to draw your own conclusions about what happened. I get that, and I get that they're short stories, so you don't want to go on forever and ever about it. But like, there's a difference between like, oh man, like I wonder if it was this or this that happened, and just like, why can't you just finish the story? It's the best way I can describe it. I don't know. I enjoyed pretty much all the stories in this book, except that some of them I just wanted to know the answer. And it was a little frustrating. But if you like kind of creepy short stories, I would still check it out. Maybe you won't be as irritated by the lack of endings as I was. So like I said, you can see I had, you know, 6 books from January to April, and then I had 6 books in May. I have just suddenly like super gotten back into reading again. I used to read a ridiculous amount as a child and a teen, and it just kind of fell off somewhere, and I'm really happy to have it back. It's just very invigorating and exciting, and I love reading, and so hopefully you will see more of these videos from me in the future.